Now the great thing about garden centres these days is that you can see a lot of the colours all laid out for you, and many of the garden centres actually lay them out by colour, and that's a real advantage because you can see the different tones and shades and tints of colour as you're going. But it's always a good idea to try and resist going too complicated, so keep things as simple as you can, and either decide to go for just all one colour and try and keep those colours as close together as possible for a real impact, or try and go for things that are harmonious together, or try colour contrasts. So I'm going to take you through the different types of colour that you could use to create real impact this season in your garden. So firstly, let's look at some pinks. So if we were going to choose pink as our main colour and just go for all lots of the same sort of colour of pink, you can see that those two have got a similar tone or tint of colour, but this one is more mauvey, and so introducing that might not be successful. So if you're just going for one type of colour, try and get the tones and the tints right. So for me, that slightly redder pink here that we've introduced pulls all these things together, and you can successfully work your whole scheme into this particular colour range. But then if we pop this one in, this is a salmon pink, you can see that that sort of starts to fight with those other pinks. So be really careful with what you choose if you're going for just one colour theme itself. The next one to look at really is colour contrasts. So if we were going to go with perhaps this mauve down here, we could successfully take this purpley mauve colour and we could try and combine it with something from the opposite side of the colour wheel. So if we went, for example, with this orange, that's pretty much on the opposite side of the colour wheel, but perhaps the dullness of the orange, it's quite a vibrant, light, bright orange, I know, but the dullness of the orange just pegs back too much against that purple. Whereas if you go directly opposite on the colour wheel, you would come up opposite the purple, you would come up with yellow. And for me, that really sings out against that mauvey purple. Really, really nice colour contrast, taking yellows and purples, contrasting them together will give you lots of impact. So what if we were going to use this orange instead? If we put this against a more lavender coloured blue, you can see that that works very, very well. And if you looked at a colour wheel, you would find that this blue was opposite the orange in the colour wheel. So again, we're causing the contrasts really well. The most exciting thing, I think, is that if you chose red as your main colour wheel choice, if you look on the opposite side to red, you'll find quite conveniently green. So the cheap option really, if you're going to go for a red colour scheme, is to rely on the green foliage of the plant to be the contrast with the reddish tones. You can see here that this is going towards the orange. Here we've got quite a scarlet red in the form of this salvia, and again that red is a really good contrast against the green because it's the other side of the colour wheel. And this more carmine red here again shows up really well against greens. So a green and red colour scheme relies on the foliage to really make the hit. Now when you come to look at colour harmonies, these tend to be a safe bet. People often choose colour harmonies rather than going for contrasts because they find them quite difficult to use. So harmonious colours would be from the similar side of the spectrum, similar side of the colour wheel. So again, we could use pinks and quite strong purples together, or we could go for paler shades of pink and that lovely lavender blue that we had earlier. We could pull those in together, and we could bring in some white there and team those shades and tints all from the same side of the colour wheel together. So I quite like using strong colour harmonies rather than paler tints of colour harmony because I think they stand out more. So let's just revisit those darker, more intense colour harmonies again. So this dark mauvey petunia, again using it with quite a strong carmine pink, and then bringing in the more lavendery blue purple of the heliotrope there together. Those are all harmonious, but they're much deeper and stronger tones of colour, and that, particularly on a sunny day, will have a lot more impact than the paler, more pastel shades. And don't be shy of using oranges and yellows together for colour harmonies. There's a good reason really why French marigolds come in these three basic colours, which rather conveniently all are harmonious and toned together really well. That's because they've been bred from the orange natural colour of the French marigold. They've been bred towards the red end of the spectrum, but also towards the yellow end of the spectrum, and all those intense colours are all tonally out of the same family and therefore are harmonious together, although they are very bright and punchy. So think outside the box and try and resist the temptation to use too many quirky colours. And of course the other thing to bear in mind is to use things like this cineraria with its lovely silvery foliage. That's a great foil for all of these strong colours and the pastel colours, perhaps not so much for the oranges and yellows, but it also sits quite comfortably against quite dark plummy reds as well. So think outside the box, be brave, don't go for a jelly bean mixture, try and colour theme your summer borders and make them look truly spectacular this year.